we do this on a regular. And I was like, you know, I just thought in my head, let me call my dad and just say, you know, how his knowledge that he imparts on the podcast is causing cannabis my cannabis intrigue to start and get to researching. So I know this is something that like a kind of segment that I think we should bring to the podcast for real. Like just a podcast about just our research, and whether that be like, oh, I smoked this and I experienced this, or I smoked this strain and I was
We
give it
could,
a
we could, we could, we could just give our practical uses, or once we
yeah,
realize the practicality of the cannabis, and just share it with because there's stuff people do need to know. Like I've been looking at this like this for years. This is real, once again, my actions were deemed addictive when I talk to people like this. That's very negative to tell me and then you sound like you're fighting against someone. I'm not addicted. I'm just very intrigued that telling me I'm addicted to something. Look at me, like physically.
yeah,
Right? I'm not even being vain right now when I say that. Like, look at me. Do I look like an addict or something? Like, I'm
yeah,
in very good shape. I'm 46 years old. Like, do I look like I'm 64, or do I look more towards my age or younger? I gotta
right,
look my age or younger, right?
yeah,
So somebody may say, well, you don't know what your insides look like. You be eating a lot of wrong dietary foods. You don't know what yours look like either.
yeah. It's
My
like
outer structure makes me think that my inner have to be a little bit better than yours.
yeah, and it's like once again, like people are so quick, I feel like, to make their judgment about cannabis based off of what someone else has told them or what they
There you
see
go.
someone else do. People
There,
rarely take the time to have knowledge of self. Like, what have you experienced? What have you researched? What have you done before you start pointing fingers at other people and what you think is wrong and this and that? Like, have you taken the time to
what
understand?
experimentation have you done to break down your science on this? Because
Right,
that's all it is. Life is science. You got to do your own trial and error. Whether it's through observation, application, whatever,
right,
we learn it, right? I observe enough to know when to stay away from this, but you've been telling me to stay away from, or to stay away from that, but you've been telling me to stay away from this, and my observation doesn't match the knowledge you imparted. This seems like
and
misinformation.
I asked the listening audience, right, to look up the scientific method, not to take us back to chemistry class in high school or whatever, but more so because I realized for me, and this is me giving free gems, me building a business, that's understanding the scientific method. You make an observation, you make a hypothesis, and then you do an experiment to either prove or disprove that this hypothesis has actually, you don't prove or disprove, you actually continue to test and you just say whether it supports the hypothesis or
And
not.
you give the conclusion, right, right.
Right. And you give the
There you
conclusion.
go.
So, for example, in the business world, you make an observation that there's nobody on the market who has cannabis flower readily accessible to a certain city. Let's just say in your city. And I'll just pick a random city. Like you're in Miami, you notice there's nobody selling weed in Miami. And there's a big tourist community that's looking for weed, but there's no dispensary for them to get the weed. So you decide, okay, well, let me make a hypothesis. Is it that people want, I assume people want cannabis in Miami, right? That's your assumption, that's your hypothesis. People want cannabis in Miami and can't get it. Then you go through a series of steps to test that. Like, do people actually want cannabis? Are they not able to get it? Why aren't they able to get it? And you go through a series of questions. And then at the end of those questions, you come out with the conclusion. I can support my hypothesis that people want
Yeah,
in Miami and cannot get it. Therefore, I am going
right.
to start a dispensary. That is the scientific method. You take the scientific method and you can apply it anywhere. People think that when you leave chemistry class, that's what I learned. I realized I don't know any, I'm not gonna say I don't know any
No,
elements of the periodic table,
no.
but I
Once again,
like,
I appreciate that because that's the seed. That's the apple not falling far from the tree right there. What you've just explained is how you've made everything all inclusive. You've learned how to apply something that seemed like mundane information and learn how to use it in your life and apply it. Because life, like I said, is nothing but science, and science is life. That
And, and
basic mathematical process you just said is the way you should approach any and everything about life.
and full transparency, like when I was in the 10th grade, I didn't feel that way. It wasn't
Right.
until I probably didn't feel that way, honestly, until after I graduated college and I really started to what they call adulting. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm just running around putting energy into like random things. There has to be a method to this madness. People cannot just be walking around just having no concept of what's going on around them. And then I realized like, you have to build that discipline yourself in your adult life, and ideally school or maybe your parents or a mentor or somebody, at some point in your walk of life may have shown you something that you can use to try to make sense of this. And I just went back to like, science has, this is how you get it done. Like so many things can come out of the scientific method, but the method is the way of thinking or a conceptual way of approaching how do
Everything comes out of it, right? It's just
yeah,
understanding that that's what you're doing. So we got
yeah,
to get people to understand that that is actually what you're doing. When you don't know, you can't show. So imagine just doing something every day. So people do things every day and don't understand why they do them, or don't even realize that they're controlling the doing of it because it's involuntary, right? So like
right,
blinking, breathing, right? They don't even understand why they blink every day,
right.
right? Right. So, but that's something everybody does, but not everybody understands why they do it every day because it's not explained to them. It's something that seems like mundane information. You don't need to know that. We worry about other pressing issues,
And the thing
right?
is, like, people will say like, oh, for example, like people will say like, oh, I just did it. Oh, I just whatever. The thing about just doing things sometimes, like, obviously there's room in life for spontaneity or to just like, just to experience and live. But the thing about like just going throughout life, just saying I just did it means that you have no way of rinsing and repeating. Like the scientific method, when you take an approach and you're more intentional about, okay, I observe, I build a hypothesis, I go through the proper experimentation to support or not support this hypothesis and build a conclusion. When you're more intentional about those steps, then you could kind of see, when you go back and reflect, you can see, okay, maybe in the hypothesis step, I kind of put a little bias in my hypothesis. Like you could kind of see where things went wrong. And then you also have a set of methods to rinse and repeat. You don't have to put in so much energy every time you go to complete a task because you already know how
Right.
it goes. You already have the skills to be
So,
able to
so what?
use.
So basically, what you just explained is learn how to see the successes even in the failure.
Right,
Right? So you don't look at things as a failure. You look at things as a try. That's why you say nothing beats a try but a failure, right?
right,
So each one should be a process or a greater step towards your ultimate success. And this
right,
is where insanity comes in. Insanity comes in when you go against the scientific process, which is doing the same things expecting different results.
right,
The scientific process tell you if you do the same things, you're going to get the same results. So you have to be insane to go against that because that is the basis of life. So this is the way I approach smoking. I was told, or dealing with cannabis, I was told that it was more detrimental than beneficial to me.
right,
Once I indulged, my understanding after my scientific process told me that was false. So even when the opposition was against me, I continued to indulge,
mm-hmm.
even throughout penalization and everything, only to now be told that I was right.
Right. That's
That's
what's crazy.
forging a path.
But that's what's crazy. And I think that's something that you and I kind of talk about here and there. But I personally feel like for you to, especially when you tell me for so many years, for you to actually drill the exact opposite into my head, for you to like put like, you know, commercials and newspaper messages and send people to school saying like, we will absolutely positively ruin your life. That's basically what they're telling you. It will ruin your life. You will be a loser. You will be a nobody if you just take one hit off the J. Like that's basically the message they spit. For us to come, like, we're not that far removed from that. Like, you know, for us to come to
It'll
now,
make you feel good. You're not
like,
far removed from that commercial. It's a joint in that boy hand. They make it seem like it's going to ruin his life. They black the screen. When he come back, he in jail forever.
right,
His whole life is in shambles.
right. That's
Right?
the
That's man made.
and what's crazy too is like, you know, I even, you know, I went to prep school or whatever, but they even had someone kind of come in and tell us like, you know, he sold heavy narcotics, a white man so heavy narcotics and ends up getting like 3 years in jail and moves on to go pursue his college career, goes to a D3 school for sports, in fact, still gets a scholarship after he does his 3 years in jail. He was selling narcotics in high school. Um, and then comes back and now he's this motivational speaker and has this high paying job and stuff like that. And like they basically had brought him in to say, had I never smoked weed, I would have never ventured out and sold narcotics, tried narcotics. I would never went to jail. You know, it was, everybody thinks it's the one hit off of the joint. And, you know, he's just saying that one hit is what just changed his life forever. And so for me,
That clouded every other judgment. That process, that's what they're telling me. That process of him, at that moment, the moment he put that weed to his lips and did that, that clouded every other judgment that he made
and for me
because of
personally,
that one process.
I mean,
That is,
I personally felt like we has brought nothing but clarity for me. Like I'm personally myself, I can't speak for everybody. I don't know how everybody engages with the plant, but also the people in my circle, the people that I talk to, the people that I'm in ciphers with, I've only heard clarity and education come out of this. Like, even if you are talking about something random, like, yo, you think aliens really real? But we're sitting there really going through a series of
so,
hypotheses.
so this is what I was explaining then, right? If that theory was true, based on the scientific process, what he was trying to impart on you, the knowledge he was trying to impart on you, if that theory was true, then it would be the same for everyone who did that process.
Right.
The moment they put the weed to their lips, it would have clouded every other judgment they made, and they would be ultimate failures in life, right? And then what you see now is you got stories of people, legacy, telling you, I've been doing this for 40 years.
Right.
They never had any major failures in their lives because we all experience failure. You can't experience success without failure. You can't experience up without down.
Right.
And vice versa.
This was so dope. This marks the end of another great episode, another great cipher. If you aren't following us on IG, make sure you go do that at Boozer Bud Podcast, where you'll get updates about new episodes, information on how you can join, how you can support us, how you can donate. So just make sure you tapped in with us on Instagram and Facebook. And we look forward to the next cipher. Peace.